Awesome. Well, welcome to everybody who joined this session, the Governance in Complex and Dynamic Global Contexts, Importance and Characteristics that facilitate transformation through adult education. Thank you so much for choosing this session. I'm aware, or we are aware, that you could have chosen a lot of different sessions because there's so much going on parallel. So we are really delighted that you are here with us and chose us, and we are really committed that you're getting great value out of this session. Now, this symposium is a big team effort, and you should see all of us hopefully on the screen because we spotlighted us. We're learning as we're going along here. So we have 8 team members from 3 different continents. And we are all members of the International Transformative Learning Association Leadership Circle. And Aliki will say a little bit more about that in a moment. But I would like for each of the team members to introduce themselves. And so I'm just basically going with my screen here so that I manage everybody. So please, Aliki, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aliki Nicolaides, and I am speaking to you from Athens, Georgia, in the northeast of the United States, and the University of Georgia, where I am a faculty member. The University of Georgia sits on the lands of the Cherokee East people and the Muskogee Cree people. And I am originally I am Greek from the Middle East. My lineage is from Palestine and ancient Greece, believe it or not. Byzantium, to be exact.
Thank you so much. And Renee.
Hi, greetings, everybody. I'm Dr. Renee Owen. I'm an assistant professor at Southern Oregon University in Ashland, Oregon. It's a small regional teaching university. And following Aliki's lead, we are situated in Ashland on the lands of the Takelma and Shasta people. And I am delighted to be here.
Thank you. Thanks, Renee. Mina.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mina Wilson. I live in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're situated on Ohlone land here. I currently work as a principal consultant for Kaiser Permanente in the Center for Health Systems Improvement, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thanks, Mina. John.
I'm John Buck. I'm located near Washington, D.C., Silver Spring, Maryland. And we're in an area that was declared to be no man's land by several surrounding tribes. So we're from no man's land. And I'm looking forward to talking with everybody today, and I hope you'll have lots of questions.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks for joining from no man's land. George.
Hello, everyone. I'm George Koulaouzides. I'm participating from Greece. My institution is the Hellenic Open University. Greece is a very ancient and old country, so I don't think that I'm able to say that this land belongs to someone else and we have colonized it, just the Greek area. I'm very happy to be with you, and I hope you will have a lot of questions.
Fantastic, thank you. Alexis? You have to unmute yourself, Alexis.
So good morning, good evening to everybody. I am Alexis Kokkos, Emeritus Professor of Adult Education in the Hellenic Open University. So in my whole professional life, I had the vision of exploring critical reflection, and more specifically of promoting the ideas and practices of transformative learning. So I have worked much with the use of art in transformative learning, and also the implementation of transformative learning in everyday teaching practice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alexis and Claudio.
Hey everyone, my name is Claudio. I'm associate professor at the University of Siena in Italy. I live in the center of Italy and I was born in Italy. So I sometimes study around the world. And so I'm very happy to be with you, and I hope to share with you some reflection and idea about transformative approach and dynamic governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And my name is Petra Buergelt, and I'm joining from Australia, from the University of Canberra. I'm an associate professor here, and we are sitting and working and living and playing on the lands of the Ngunnawal people, who I pay my deepest respect for. And I'm working at the nexus of disaster risk reduction, transformation, and Indigenous worldviews, knowledges, and practices. And I'm welcoming everybody else who joined us a little bit later to this session. As I said at the beginning, this symposium is run by a team of 8 academics and practitioners from around the world, from 3 continents. And I'm starting to share my screen so that I can give you an overview of how this symposium is going to run. I hope you can all see my screen. And I'm just making myself small here, putting it down. So we are going to, that's a little bit the journey map here. So we are going to start with the importance and context. And then John Buck, who is one of the primary consultants of sociocracy in the world, is going to give us an overview to set us up for a fishbowl where we are actually spending a lot of time for where you can see us in a fishbowl enacting sociocracy as form as experiential learning. And then and we're going to give you a couple of prompts for your observations. And then after the fishbowl, we are going to invite you to share your observations. And after that, we're giving you a couple of case studies of how a couple of us use sociocracy in their higher education and adult education settings. And then Alexis is going to link sociocracy and transformative learning for us, and then we are going to complete. So what is, or why is transformative governance in adult education organizations important? Well, from our perspective, humanity is in an experiential crisis and in a major transitional transformative period. So worldwide, there's diverse cascading, compounding, and interconnecting crises in multiple ways. We are experiencing mental and physical disease, violence and wars, climate change and environmental destruction, extreme natural events, disaster, and now also the global pandemic. But also the genocide of peoples with different perspectives, in particular indigenous peoples. And there's mounting literature that the source of all of those crises is philosophical and spiritual. And the transformation of the predominant Western rational, reductionist, and objective worldview is required. And from our perspective, education organizations are really in the best position to set us up for the collectively and individually to develop the capacities and environment required for those transformations. But the question is, are adult education organizations in a position to facilitate the required transformations? And from our perspective, again, largely, or we're proposing that largely adult educations organizations are actually maintain the status quo, starting with Plato, advancing rationality and reductionism, which led to education that is disconnected, that is disconnecting us from our true nature, our ancestors and ancient laws and wisdom, and our invisible feminine and spiritual world. And adult education is largely perpetuating Western ways of knowing, cultures, and pedagogies, and conditioning us and domesticating us over really the last centuries, which is inhibiting people fully developing and maturing into adults, robbing us of our innate knowledges and suppressing other knowledges. So all of that, basically, education, unfortunately, has been largely contributing to the existential crisis. Now we can ask, what is the role of governance in undermining adult education being part of the solution? And we are inviting you to consider that the top-down hierarchical governance, which is governing adult education in institutions, is leading to adult education institutions increasingly being governed by administrators, which is largely suppressing and silencing academics. So we invite you to consider that adult education themselves need to transform. And at the core of this transformation is the way adult education organizations govern themselves. And we propose that sociocracy offers a powerful governance framework capable of creating conditions for individual and collective transformation of adult education organizations. And here I'm going to, so I hope that this created a little bit of a context of the importance of the role of governance in adult education organizations. And I'm handing over to Aliki to share a little bit about the context of our team and how we discovered sociocracy as a governance system.
Thank you, Petra, and welcome to all of you, wherever you are. Just very briefly, in 2013, several scholars, thought leaders, practitioners who have been part of the community of transformative learning began to ask the question of, is it sustainable for us to continue to rely on the good humor, the generosity of people in institutional settings to host conferences, because that was the main way in which this community that centers around the ideas of transformative learning was gathering. And we started to realize that as a community, we needed a way to govern ourselves that was just beyond a kind of by chance, by mistake, if it so happened. And so we spent from 2013 to 2018 convening 2 or 3 times a year as being an inquiry around how might we create a association of scholars, practitioners, thought leaders who are passionate and dedicated to the principles of transformative learning adult education, theory to practice, practice to theory, and how could we do that in a way that was connecting our institutional settings, our homes, our places of work and action, without necessarily being so instrumentalized or kind of becoming a rigid system. And in 2018, John Buck and Renee Owens, who are here with us, presented the sociocratic model. I was in the audience, so were several, Alexis and Claudio and everybody, and we sort of like, wait a minute, this might work. So we decided that we decided to be in an experiment. So we've been in an experiment now for 2 years. Pandemia gave us a lot of time to be an inquiry around how might sociocratic principles and dynamic governance create the conditions for an association to grow and thrive. So we are now members of the International Transformative Learning Association. I'm the current director. I have co-founded this with Victoria Marsick, Alexis Kokkos, who's here, Claudio Melacarne, Steve Shapiro, John Dirks, Michelle Al-Hadef Jones, Ellen Scully Russ. So we have we called ourselves the stewards, and we have stewarded our way to this moment. And you are now going to experience this moment of us sort of coming alive, using the principles of dynamic governance to truly transform ourselves. I mean, you know, from mom and pop shop to a community that can connect from various parts of the world and be really thoughtful about inclusion and thoughtful about how we connect and organize around principles that mirror our values of transformative learning. So maybe that's enough for now, Petra. Is that enough?
Thank you so much for providing us that overview, and I hope that situates and positions us in how we came into experimenting and starting to love sociocracy. So on that point, I'm handing over to John, and John is going to give us an overview of sociocracy to set us up for the fishbowl. Over to you, John.
Thank you. So give me a moment while I go into screen share here and go into present mode. So first of all, these slides here are not the slides you want to use if you're generally telling people about sociocracy. I crafted them very specifically because they said I had 10 minutes, and there is a set of slides that you can, Petra, maybe you can share them, that go much more in depth into it. But I decided I wanted to just focus on the essence of what we're talking about and prepare you for the demonstration that we're about to run. So this is a very classic top-down diagram. There's the stewards are up at the top, and let me get my spotlight on. Okay. So the stewards are here that Aliki mentioned. She is the director. These solid boxes here are things that are actually operating right now. There's leaders in each of these things. And the dotted lines represent departments or things that we would like to get going. You'll notice here that the beloved circle, or just beloved, is going to be the focus of the decision we're going to make today. And it's an actual decision. You're going to be watching an actual meeting of the leadership of the ITLA. Just some more thoughts about this diagram. This could be your university. This could be the board of trustees and the president of the university, and then these are different departments, and then there's departments or maybe schools, and then there's departments under that. You recognize that it's a typical pattern. It's not the only one, but it's the most typical pattern for a top-down structure. And a long time ago, when I went to work for Boeing Aircraft as a technical writer, it was a nice job. I liked my boss. I liked the people I was working with, the work and all that. But I really was bothered by the fact that I suddenly realized, having gotten out of college, that I actually was not working in a democratic organization. Boeing was not running democratically. I could vote for the mayor of Seattle, but I couldn't vote for my boss. And even though I would have voted for my boss, I could have. So I went on and got a job at the Federal Aviation Administration, became an expert in computer-based training, all the time kept looking for a place I could work that was running democratically, meaning I could vote for my boss. And I was in Holland to give a speech one time and was talking with my hosts and telling them that I couldn't find such a company. And they said, it's been solved. Go down to Rotterdam and see Gerard Endenberg. Gerard Endenberg was running, at that point, he had taken over a family business from his parents. He was running an electrical engineering company. He had left his job at Philips, where he helped Philips get the patent on the flat speaker that's in your cell phone. Brilliant cybernetics expert and so forth. And he had left that in order to take over his parents' living management laboratory. How can we manage better? And he said he remembered taking over his company, and it was a diagram that looked something like this, only it was, here we wire up buildings and here we wire up ships and so forth. He said he looked at that and he said, this is a power structure, a drawing of a power structure. And as an electronics engineer, I would never, ever design a power structure this way. And the reason is it has no feedback loop. You can't steer if you don't have a feedback loop. If you're driving along in your car and you close your eyes, you suddenly cut off your feedback loop and whoops, you can't steer the car anymore. That's just a basic fact of systems. And so he said, well, how do we put a feedback loop that cannot be ignored by the top of the organization in place? And that's the essence of what he was calling sociocracy, which kind of means like rule by friends. Democracy is ruled by the demos, or the general mass of people. This is ruled by people who know each other. We also have been calling it dynamic governance because it's about having a governance system that is dynamic, that has a feedback loop. So he said, how do I do that? He said, first of all, what we have to do is we have to have a both and system. It has to run day to day as this top-down structure that we know works, but periodically we break down that structure and everybody gets together in a circle or a ring, whatever you call it, a bunch of people, and they sit back and they are completely equal and they make decisions about how they want the day-to-day operations to go. So this is what you can call a general circle. It includes the leaders of all these different departments and of course, the overall leader, but it's not complete at this point. You need something more. You need to start organizing people who are working together. And so you need a lower level circle. So our research and practitioner circle here has several people in it, and they should meet as a circle to be reflecting about what they're doing. And then the leader and the elected representative, which is represented by this over here, are members of this larger circle. So you now have a way of building up feedback from the bottom. The circle structure becomes the way of building the feedback. So here in this case, R&P had a listening group with 2 people in here, and they would sit with all the other people here, and they together elected representatives. So this representative here might be a representative here, who might be a representative here, who might sit on the board of directors or the stewards. That's happened before with amazing consequences. And the question then became, you can take away that underlying power structure and you can just show the circle structure. So if you want to show it in the way that you're operating, then you get this right here. Here are the stewards up here. Here are the circles that we saw down below. And the other diagram, we've just removed the operational structure. Here is the beloved circle. That's going to be the object of our discussion today. And these arrows mean that whoever is appointed from here as the leader of this circle, there will be an elected representative that comes up here and who can evaluate this, or if this boss job was vacant, this person can vote for who ought to be the new leader here. And in fact, it's very fluid and very flexible. There's been lots of times where the whole circle has said, oh, we want to all be part of this general circle up here. We need to really have all of our voices in this. And there can be temporary representatives going from here all the way up there. It's a very fluid way of everybody being equivalent. The question remains then is, how do we make a decision if we're all equivalent? Do we sit around and talk and look for consensus and sitting around for hours and the person with the hardest rear end is the winner because they outlast everybody? Or what is it? And he invented a method called consent. Consent actually shows up in the US Declaration of Independence, where it says governments exist by the consent of the people. It doesn't say by the consensus of the people or the majority vote. It's the can we accept it? And so there's a lot to be said about this consent decision making. It's a combination of rational and completely irrational. If we ask, do you have any objection? And somebody says no objection, but they're looking down at their belly, I would say that sounds like an objection because your body and your mouth are disagreeing with each other. When in doubt, it's an objection. And consent decision making depends upon some really new conceptual things that have arisen in the last 30, 40 years, like both and thinking that has emerged out of the mediation community, and rapid prototyping that you see now in agile, blind spots, emotional intelligence. All those are important when you're learning how to make consent decisions. And we'll see a consent decision being made today. Renee will be leading it. She'll be asking, okay, does anybody have any objection, or can you consent? It's going to be focused on the beloved circle here. And the meeting is going to have 4 parts. We'll have a very fast opening round, which is intended to bring everybody in. And it's a kind of power ceremony. Everybody is coming in as equals. It's like when the judge comes in, there's a little power ceremony. Somebody in a robe and they sit above, and they say all rise and all that. The mayor comes in and they play music with the band. Real power always has a power ceremony, and that's a kind of power ceremony. It says we're all equivalent. You deal with administrative matters, and then you deal with whatever the content is on your agenda. The administrative matters includes accepting this agenda here. And then the closing round is a feedback loop. How did the meeting work today? What worked well, what didn't, so that we can improve always the way the meeting works. The decision process, the template we'll be using, there's multiple ones, but the simplest one is what you see here. We'll be presenting a proposal, asking questions, getting a consent, and celebrating. Celebration is important, and I'll be kind of giving you like posts of what, where we are in the process. So today we'll have only one agenda item. It's a real meeting. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that, because we'll, I want to get out, I'm going to, it's not letting me get out of this, so I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment so I can go over to the other thing I wanted to get to. So I'm going to go into the, I will screen share again here. All right, so what we have here is just a Google Doc that ITLA has been keeping the minutes of their General Circle meetings in for quite some time. You can see them there. And today it's going to be an actual meeting. This is the logbook, so-called. It's got key decisions and so forth. It's really handy to have this properly set up. And so here we are at the agenda that we'll be using today. And I think that's my 10 minutes. So I'm turning it over to you, Renee, and I'll go into the background and take notes and so forth. What you see here is exactly the outline that we saw in in my earlier slides. So
thank you, John. And John, do you want to present the prompts for the participants to what to observe, what to focus on in observing?
I will highlight what's happening. Like when you start the opening round, I'll circle this and highlight it, or I may say something. So no, I will be trying to explain the prompts as we go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're explaining the prompts. Okay.
Yeah. But Renee will be doing the facilitating, and so I'll be explaining to people what she's doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Renee, handing over to you to so basically we are going now into the fishbowl, where we are the 8 of us are basically having a meeting using sociocratic principles, and Renee is going to facilitate that meeting. So over to you, Renee.
Great, thank you. So yes, this is very much how we operate the International Transformative Learning Association. At any one of our meetings, what we're doing is it's just just like John just did, this whirlwind explanation of sociocracy that cannot possibly be comprehensible without experiencing. You're going to experience a very short meeting. We've just truncated this meeting for efficiency. And then you'll have a chance to reflect on the meeting and understand things better, such as consensus after we're done. We'll reflect on it with all of you participants. And so in displayed on the screen, John has our short agenda for today. Opening round, acceptance of agenda, administrative matters, which we will not do today, and some content and a closing round. So we always bring every voice into the room at the beginning of every meeting with an opening round. So let's just use a short phrase to bring ourselves in with an opening round. And normally, if we were in person, we would be seated in a circle where we can see that we are all equals, and it would be obvious who should speak in what turn in a round. So a round literally means you're sitting in a round, and in contiguously each person would speak. Instead, as facilitator, I call on people generally as I see them in the circle on the screen. So George, a short phrase for how you're doing today. Or anything.
I'm just fine and anxious. I hope I don't have any problems with my power unit here, and I suddenly go off, but I'm very confident that things will go very well.
for letting us know. Claudio.
Yeah, for me it's okay. We can start and share.
Aliki.
I'm excited and nervous.
Alexis.
I'm waiting for the continuation with excitement.
Petra.
I'm it's in the middle of the night here, so I'm hoping that I can be fully present. And I am present, and I'm excited as well.
And Mina, Wilhelmina goes by Mina.
Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to the experience. Happy to be here.
And John Buck is actually not a part of our circle. But he's going to, as Petra said, do some narrating for you to help you understand what's going on. But so how are you, John?
I'm good. I went jogging this morning and ran into a bunch of other joggers. So it was lots of fun.
And I'll share that I'm feeling pretty grounded, partly because opening round always grounds me a bit. It just brings me into the relationship with the other people in the circle. And as facilitator, I find that really grounding, which is really important. And it demonstrates the relationships that we have, and that's how we make decisions. So the next item on our agenda is acceptance of the agenda, which is displayed, and I've gone over it briefly. And so I'm just this will be our first consent round, a formal consent round. I would say each person's name, you'll see that today, and get eye contact and see if they're okay with it. Acceptance of agenda is pretty simple. So I'm just gonna get a thumbs up and I'm gonna look at everybody, or some sort of reaction. Are we okay with the agenda? I see Mina now. All right, so we have consented to the agenda for today. There are no administrative matters for this short, efficient meeting. There is a content proposal. And again, for all of you watching this is real. This is a decision that has been on our agenda for several months, actually, that we have not had time to get to yet. And I personally am excited to finally get to discuss this proposal and see what we end up consenting to. So the background to this proposal is that the transformative learning community, we have a spotty history with inclusion, and it's welcoming of people of color in as one type of diversity. And this may be a good time for the International Transformative Learning Association to take up a serious and explicit effort for inclusion and anti-racism. The idea of a beloved community comes from Representative John Lewis, recently deceased, whose lifelong efforts to fight racism continue past his passing, inviting all of us to get into good trouble, to use John's words, to democratize all spaces for being, doing, and knowing. So the background's very important when we present a proposal, and here's the actual proposal language: to create a beloved community circle that will join the ITLA dynamic governance structure. Now, dynamic governance and sociocracy are the same thing. Please don't get confused by those two different words being used interchangeably. So the structure that John Buck showed us earlier with the different circle structures, where you have the leadership circle in the middle, the steward circle and whatnot, the proposal is that we add a circle called a beloved circle. So this would be a group of people that would meet. So the purpose of the beloved circle would be to actively promote anti-racism and social justice throughout ITLA. So once a proposal is on the table, we proceed with a round. And the first round is always a question round or clarifying round. And essentially, I'm asking, do you understand the proposal? What questions do you have about it? And often a lot comes out of that. And John will actively also be taking some minutes, because sometimes that ends up going in the minutes. So I'm going to begin with Aliki and go around. Aliki.
I have a little question around, I want to clarify this. So anti-racism has become sort of a jargon in the United States. And I have a sense that for me, this has to be beyond just an American-centric sort of effort. Now, it's true that certainly the history of ITLC, the International Transformative Learning Conference kind of gatherings, predominantly happen in the United States. though the Hellenic Association and in partnership with Israel and the Italian network have also hosted conferences. So we are beginning to sort of live into the idea of being a global community, but we really have been predominantly American-centric and Eurocentric. And so I have a question about using that language in the proposal, anti-racism. So I'm thinking about that out loud with you today.
Okay. And Claudio, any questions or clarifications that you'd like made on the proposal?
Thank you very much. I think the proposal is very clear and yeah, but I have a question about one or two sentences, because we can introduce this new circle focus on inclusion and anti-racism, but I don't know if we are in a global association, so people of color is center in this debate. I'm thinking if we can include other word to use inclusion in a more large meaning, because probably in other countries I don't know, probably I think in other countries it could be not center the people of color, because if or could be other words to introduce, but this is a question. I don't know how to solve this, my question. Thank you.
And feel free, usually as questions are asked, sometimes people will have some sort of information to share or some sort of a response to a question, and that's helpful. And so just let me know if there's something that you want to speak up to respond to someone's question. George, any clarifying questions?
Thank you, Renee. The aim for the creation of this circle is quite obvious for me. But I would like to build on what Aliki and Claudia said before me, and I would like to say that since we are international association, we have to work a little bit on the wording. And I have a small issue with not an issue, but maybe it's a language issue with the name of the circle. I'm not feeling very comfortable with the name Beloved Circle. Trying to translate it in Greek doesn't make any real sense, doesn't give you the idea of inclusion. So I would like to see and discuss whether we can create the circle with a circle with this specific orientation, but maybe do something to make it more clear, do something name-wise, make it more understandable from everyone and not only from English-speaking countries and people that have English as their language, as their mother tongue. It's sometimes we are lost in translation, and I don't want to be lost in translation on this specific issue because it's very crucial.
So your question is essentially, does it really need to have this name? And you're throwing out an open generative question of, is there another name that would be more direct and understandable from around the world? Alexis?
Well, I think it's a very good idea. This kind of circle was something that was missing until now in our structure. So it's very nice to hear this proposal. I wonder, if you like, it's a question, I wonder how we could be linked with organizations or people, individuals that struggle for anti-racism, and people who have suffered from racism. So I think it is very important for us to find some links with them. And I wonder, and I would like to hear your ideas, how we can do it in practice, do it effectively.
That's another big question. We have a lot of big open-ended questions today. And we'll talk about reactions to those in a moment. And Petra, questions, clarifications?
I think it's a great idea. I agree with Aliki. Anti-racism doesn't sit right with me, and I'm wondering whether we could use instead something like some positive slant on it, something like inclusion. And I'm also wondering about coming from the indigenous perspectives, whether there might be also something in it in terms of decolonizing and indigenizing. And we can talk about different terms there, but that might be more action-oriented, shall we say? And then I also have a question into the timeline. Whether it's a good idea to start the circle now, or do we have the capacity to starting the circle now, or is it something to put a little bit on the back burner?
Okay, so also a timeline question and more questions about the language. And so John, who is acting as our sort of secretary right now, has started displaying some of those questions as he's modifying the proposal as we go along, which is very typical in a question round, that the proposal starts being modified. And Mina, clarifying questions from you.
Yes, as I'm listening, I really resonate a lot with the inclusion as a larger meaning. I do a lot of translational research and applying the concepts in different communities, and I wonder how we might maybe cast a wider net to get more voices. And then also, I think I had the same thought about the anti-racism comment. I think as we look globally, there's better language that we can use, and maybe we can further define what that is. And I'll leave it there.
All right. I think what might make sense at this point is to sort of is to look at just different aspects of some of these questions as we try to refine the proposal into something that would be acceptable, something that people would want to consent to. And so I'm going to go with thinking about the language first of the anti-racism social justice aspect, just focusing on that. If we were to use this language that John has here, actively promote inclusion without it saying what type of inclusion, just inclusion broadly, and decolonization and social justice throughout ITLA, I'd like to get a quick reaction from each of you, whether that language is good enough. And that's, by the way, what the meaning of consent is sometimes. It's not, does everybody just think it's the best? Is that the best solution? Which would be consensus. Let's all agree that it is absolutely, everything is perfect about this. Consent is, hey, you know what? This doesn't go against our values. I can accept it. That's what consent is. And so I'm just going to do a consent round, and I'm going to go the opposite direction this time. Again, only on this aspect of inclusion, decolonization, and social justice, the last part of the phrase of the proposal. Mina, would that be acceptable to you?
I need a little bit more clarity on what decolonization means as an action. I don't understand what that means.
Petra, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so from my understanding, it's really critically inquiring into what is oppressing not only indigenous peoples but also people of different perspectives to the predominant Western culture, and then to actively take out all of those oppressive structures, and that's discrimination, racism, institutionalized racism, cultural racism, individual racism, all of those things which individually but also systemically suppress alternative perspectives. And then you could go into, once you're taking those things out, putting in more inclusive perspectives. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Petra.
Okay. I'm going to come back, Mina, after we'll do this reaction round. So we've heard a definition of decolonization. So as I complete this round, we're responding to the language of inclusion, decolonization, and social justice. So Petra, you're next in my circle. Is that language you think you could consent to? What's your reaction to that?
I can consent to it. I would have it, and I don't know how you call it, but including decolonizing, because it makes it more of an active thing and a process language.
John, did you get that?
Yep.
And by the way, I used language I didn't mean to use. I asked if you could consent to this, and this isn't a consent round. This is just a reaction round. And so I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. I wasn't using quite the right language.
So sorry, so I meant more active language.
And I didn't put down including, because then we would have promote inclusion, including.
Promote including okay. Yeah.
So we would have the word right here, which would be including, which I've been an English teacher before, and I would mark you down.
Right. I trust you then. I trust you. So otherwise I can, but when I do struggle. Oh no, yeah, no.
Okay.
No, I can.
All right, so it's good. So again, I'm just getting reactions, and you're kind of letting me know, like, if this were to be consented to, like, what would your reaction be? Alexis, what's your reaction to this language?
For the moment, I am covered by what I have heard, so it's okay.
Okay, and George?
Yes, I'm fine. I'm fine with everything so far. So
okay.
It's fine with me.
Claudio, which is this particular aspect of this language?
Yeah, it's clear, and it's okay for me now. Yeah.
Okay, Aliki?
I would like to suggest that just a little ordering, which is, I think justice is the biggest word, and I wonder if we do promote justice and then put inclusion, decolonization, right? Maybe we have a little, and then it's like justice, so it's individual, collective, societal. I think we overuse social justice and we don't do anything about it, and I think we want to get active about it, and that to me that just that little tweak makes it more intentional and clear. But otherwise, I'm on board.
So actively promote justice, inclusion, decolonization. This is to go along with the nouns through ITLA, and so we would delete that and social justice at the end. Okay, and decolonizing becomes decolonization.
Yes, that's mine. I think that makes it now intentional, right?
So I'm going to come back to you, Mina. What's your reaction now to this language?
I think it's a much stronger statement now. Okay. I appreciate the adjustments.
Okay, I think we're doing okay on time. We've got almost 10 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes. And so I'm going to go ahead and move past this language, because I think it's in a place that's going to work. Again, good enough to try. And I'm going to go to the language of beloved community circle. The name beloved, that was something that George brought up. And so we're going to separate from rounds for a second and go into a creative process. So does anybody have any creative ideas or suggestions for perhaps how to resolve that issue?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading Braiding Sweetgrass, which if you haven't read it, it's brilliant, and it's done by I think an Onondaga woman. She also is the founder of the School of Forestry in Syracuse. She's an amazing plant biologist, activist, creative writer. I mean, brilliant. Anyway, she uses this, and this is in sort of the language of gratitude. And I thought, what if it's a gratitude circle? Because then it's a bigger space, and every language has some way of expressing thanks and gratitude. And that, to me, that's more inclusive. And then we get to define the expressions of gratitude that happen by really allowing people to belong. So that's been language that I've been playing with in my head once George said, it immediately came to me, but that's my creative spark.
George, I want to get your reaction to whether that proposal would fit with make this proposal good enough to try for you?
I was surprised by Aliki's proposal, so I'm not ready to, just comment on that. I needed some time to work on this issue. But I think that even though we're trying to do something here important, our world is still going to be a world of social injustice. And what we are dreaming of is more of a utopia. So maybe we can actually call it a utopian circle.
I like that, actually.
Aliki, your mute is off. So now I'm starting to see both directions, something that John talks about.
It's going to be utopian circle. We are not going to be come on, utopian nothing. It's a nothing circle if you use utopia, in my view, George.
So as we do this creative process, what has ended up organically happening is a little bit of reactions. Even though we're not doing a reaction round per se, I can clearly see that if we were to do a reaction round, utopian circle would not fly. There would definitely be an objection to that. I think I have so we don't have a name for the circle at this point. And I'm wondering if we can move forward with this proposal without a clear name. Does anybody have any other ideas? Or what would be the reaction to gratitude circle? I'm not sure if that would be acceptable, or if there would be that. Petra?
I really actually like the utopian circle because it does embody all, justice, inclusion, empowerment, all of the things I think we wanted to have. So it's kind of the very name would give the circle a future to live into, because then they would need to, the participants of the circle or members of the circle would need to work out, what actually are the characteristics of utopia and how do we bring them forth in our organization. And I think bringing utopian characteristics forth for our organization would be perfect.
So we still have the idea of utopian circle on the table. I'm going to offer as facilitator that I think that captures some ideas around the aim of the circle. We didn't get to share that with everybody in attendance here, but the aim of the circle is incredibly important. Every circle has to understand what their aim is. But we're focusing on the name itself, and will that name work? And again, I happen to know that there would probably be a paramount objection to that. And interestingly enough, from people who are watching right now, the Fishbowl, there is a suggestion for equity circle. When George first brought this issue up, he said he wanted a name that would be really clear to people in every country and language, clarity around what the circle is and does. I'll share that I feel gratitude circle sounds unclear to me as what the circle does, and utopian circle as well. And so I would be curious then to do a reaction around the language equity circle. Would that be good enough to try? And I'm going to this time start the circle with Claudio. What would be your reaction to equity circle?
No, I agree with these names, but I'm thinking that the topic of this circle is the implicit. Someone has the power and someone else don't have the power. So for me, the key word is the power. But I don't know how to translate for the circle. But the sense for me is that people in this circle could support other people to have power. I don't know, to do something.
So I feel like you're also clarifying what the circle will do. And I want to clarify that once the circle forms, they will be clear on what their aim is. And that will there'll be more clarity around that with time. And then I'm going to go to Aliki with this equity circle notion. Oh, empowerment, not just power. Aliki.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of Jedi. I just was putting that in, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Like if that could create everything. Like the Jedi circle sounds really cool to me. and it includes all the ideas that we're bringing. And of course, Jedi are powerful. So
interesting. I would like to get a visual of like how that feels to everybody when you hear Jedi Circle. Can you just give me like, is your head nodding? Are there any like, no? I'm going to give mine, which is like a pretty good feeling. I'm seeing the thumbs up on that idea. Okay, we're going to adjust the language in the proposal then to create a JEDI, what an incredible acronym, if I may make a comment, community circle. The power of minds coming together with sociocracy just blows me away over and over again. Create a JEDI circle that will join the ITLA dynamic governance structure. The purpose of the JEDI circle would be to actively promote justice, inclusion, and decolonization throughout ITLA. This does not define the time, which was also one of the questions in our reaction round, but I'm going to propose that the circle itself would work that out, that people would decide who's going to be on the circle, and they would decide when, essentially when they come together organically, that's when the circle begins, and they would decide when their active work begins, and we don't need to decide that. So I'm going to leave that out at this time. And so I think we are ready for a consent round. We're going to do a consent round, folks. After several objections of the smaller rounds, I'm going to do a consent round for the overall proposal. I've read it out loud, and John is almost finished adjusting it. John, the word beloved circle is still in the second sentence of the proposal. If you can
thanks. Yeah.
Edit that. All right, create a justice, equity, diversity, inclusion JEDI circle that will join the ITLA dynamic governance structure. The purpose of the JEDI circle would be to actively promote justice, inclusion, decolonization throughout ITLA. I am going to begin with Petra. Can you consent? Is this good enough to try? Good enough for now, safe enough to try? Can you consent to this proposal?
Yes, I'm excited.
Alexis.
Yes, I think it's a very good solution, the synthetic name, because it's not only one dimension, it's multi-dimensional, so I like it very much.
George?
Yeah, it's fine with me, and as a Star Wars fan, yeah, that's even better. It's becoming even better.
And Claudio.
Yeah, I agree. Jedi is fantastic.
Aliki.
I love it for now. Perfect.
Mina.
May the force be with us.
Yes.
And I too can consent to this proposal. I too am excited about it. I see positive body language. I don't see anybody saying they agree, but not kind of displaying body language that says, like not really. And so I think that we can do our last round, our last phase with this celebrate. Let's celebrate. We have a JEDI circle at ITLA, everybody. Woo!
Woo-hoo.
And once that circle comes together, they can start making those decisions more thoroughly. So at this point, that closes our meeting. We always do a closing round, which is some feedback for the facilitator, how the meeting went, any other important comments. We're going to make this super quick, one word, folks, because we need to move on. And I'm going to begin with Mina, closing round.
Excellent.
Petra.
Creative.
Alexis.
Okay.
George.
Fascinating.
Claudio.
Creative. Yeah.
Aliki.
Brilliant.
And I share some of those similar sentiments. And John, thank you for taking minutes. Do you want to share a closing comment, even though you're not in the circle itself?
I thought it went very well. It did leave kind of on the table this thought about finding links to other organizations.
I forgot about that. Yes.
But I think it's okay. I'm just going to make a note here that's for kind of one of the aim considerations in the circle. So I've got two notes: the kind of this definition of decolonization and that suggestion that the circle find links to other organizations would be how I would reconcile that. So just
part of its aim.
Yeah, just in a lesson for the future might be to ask: have we, got all the thoughts that we had down incorporated.
Okay, great. Thank you for making sure that that stayed on the table in the minutes, since we forgot to address that verbally. So I believe the next section of our workshop here, the circle is closed, is for all of you
And
now.
if I could, I don't know, Petra, if you put the links to those more extensive slides in anywhere, but I hope people will be able to walk off with that, because there was a lot of work that went into that I felt was going to go more than 10 minutes. So I would love for them to have it if you have it.
Oh, yeah.
We can share that via, Renee, can you share that via slide share? And then we can definitely add it to our presentation.
I'm not clear on what slides you're talking about or what I have access to share.
Petra had prepared some slides. I might be able to find it and put it in. So let me try to do that in the background.
Yeah.
Thanks, John, for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now, George, I think you are leading our discussion with everybody here to unpack what they saw and questions they have, and discussing this.
Okay, we have 4 guests. I see Monica, and I'm so happy to see her after a very, very long time. And Giovanna Del Gobo, I think, is the other person, and Liz Pope and Celia Taurelli from ETF. That's the European Training Foundation, I think. Initially, Petra had prepared a few prompts that I'm going to show them to you right now, very fast, so that you can just enter the discussion. Those prompts were, what is the value of the rounds? And I would love to have your opinion and maybe your views on that. How did you perceive the rounds of our sociocracy organizational scheme? And second, why would you welcome objections? What do you think is the value of the objections? You actually were able to witness an objection about the name, which was quite strong, and other objections as well. So I think this is another point that we can elaborate on. And the third point is, what do you think about the leadership of the sociocracy way of doing things? Who is the leader and why, in your opinion? So let me go through. Let me show them once more. What is the value of the rounds? That's one question that we would like to discuss and share with you. Of course, any other question is welcome, but this is also very important. Why would you welcome objections in a sociocratic meeting, and what do you think is the value of them? And of course, who is the leader and why? So now that I have presented the prompts, if someone of the people that were attending would like to comment, please open your camera, open your microphone, and do so. Yeah, I see no comments yet. Well, we can always I can always address the same questions to the members of the circle, and let's start a discussion, and then maybe our guests will also join. So let's start with the second point about, I also have them in writing. Here they are. Why would you welcome objections? So objections are the main point. Let's start with, yeah.
George, I think the one of the things that's really important about dynamic governance for me is that often there's a way in which there's a politesse. You become very polite and everyone wants to, there's a very subversive silencing that happens in governance structures. And one of the permissions that dynamic governance gives is that I get to disagree, and I get to disagree with passion, with emphasis, with theatrics. I mean, I don't have to be a polite girl or, conform to stereotypes. So for me, objections are an important space because it's very authentic to the value of communication and how I engage.
Okay, that's a very good point. Anyone else wish to?
Yeah, I feel like Aliki just commented both on the value of objections, why they would be welcome, and the value of the rounds. That when you're going to get a chance to speak, if you're if you're more submissive, or quiet, you have to speak up. If you tend to be someone who dominates and speaks a lot or loudly, you have your time to speak and you'll have it, but you're not going to have more than that.
For me,
Petra?
also for me, the objections always create much better decisions. Because it forces everybody to rethink and to see things from a different perspective, and in working out the responses to the objections and finding solutions which address the objections, you inevitably and blows me away every time how an objection can turn things on its head, but end up with a much better decision, a more accurate decision. And also it means with the objections, if we can't voice our objections and then a decision gets made, we are not behind the decision. And so then, people typically in teams, if I lead a team and people are not behind it, they will start sabotaging it. They're not motivated about implementing the decision. And we are basically going nowhere, and because it wasn't an accurate decision, we are going into the wrong direction altogether. Whereas the objections are taking that out. It basically then gives you the buy-in from everybody. We go into the decision into a direction which is much more accurate, but also we have everybody's buy-in, and nobody's going to sabotage it, which means it might take longer and often takes longer to make a decision. However, once we have the decision, we're going full steam and we're making up time in no time.
Okay, I see Claudio has raised his hand, and I would really like to hear from the audience.
There's a comment in the chat too, George.
I didn't see the comment. I'm sorry. Thank you, Renee. Let me see. What was the comment? There's a comment.
Speaking your mind is the foundation
of having a voice. Yes, thank you, Neha. I hope I said the name correctly. Yes, actually it is. Okay, then Claudio had raised his hand before, so I will give him now. I would like to hear his opinion. Then Mina, Claudio.
Yeah, my opinion is very is this. Dynamic governance is very useful in my experience because it is very simple to use to learn, and it delete the noise. And I don't know your experience. In many meetings we introduce the comments, the reflection outside the focus of the meeting, and this approach allow you to focalize the attention to the agenda, and you have an engagement with clear rules and roles. This is the first point from my point of view. The second one is that you can go out to a circle meeting with the idea that you haven't the power to change something. So this is an approach give you responsibility to your action or not action. This is a problem of the member. This is not a problem of the method.
Okay. Before I give the floor to Mina, I see one question from Syria, and she comes from a very hierarchical organization, the European Training Foundation, I think, as a European organization. She asks how to create a situation where objection is a value as opposed to disturbance. Is this a question? Yes, John, I would like you to answer that before I give the floor to Mina.
The first thing is that if you're trying to change it, there needs to be two of you doing it. If you're the only one trying to do it, they kind of look at you like, are you weird? But if there's two of you, then, well, maybe we have to listen. You do not say to whoever is in power, gee, how would you like to share your power? Because they will say, I like my power, I don't want to share it. But you can say, how would you like to rewire your power to make everything work better and take some of the pressure off of you so that you can be a more effective leader? Now you're talking the language of the person who gets their personal value out of, okay, I'm in charge, which is okay. Good leaders often will feel pleasure out of their power. But now you've said, okay, we can do it even better. We can rewire what you're doing. And so those are the first two concepts to approach the hierarchy with.
Okay, Mina, please, before I read Liz's question. Mina.
Yeah, I'm kind of addressing Syria's comment as well, how to create a situation where objection is a value as opposed to a disturbance. You have to create a solid container for this, in my experience. So in the organization I work in, it's very hierarchical, from a national to a regional to local organizations. And for us, the wisdom of how to do things lives closest to the work. So getting everybody's objections on the table and wrestling with those is vital. In fact, the first session we had was so raucous that it trickled down to all of the regions. This is totally out of control. This is just, it's falling off the rails. And I had to go back and say, no, this is not falling off the rails. This is part of the process. And so people finally, after that was the first meeting, after the third meeting, I was getting from people, oh my God, this is the most pleasure I've had in a collaborative meeting since I've been at this organization. So it's a bit of chaos at first, but if you hold a solid container, the arc of evolution will happen.
Okay, I know that we have, according to our schedule, 3 more presentations, 5 minutes, but we have to address the point that Liz has done. And she asks us, I'm just curious, why would you not welcome objections within the structure you have presented? Why would you not welcome objections?
I can't think of a reason why we wouldn't. I mean, that's the point, is to set up a structure where objections are welcomed.
I wonder if the question is, there's a difference between objection and I think disagreeing. And I think that, in systems, at least, in my academic system, I can disagree, but I cannot object. And disagreement is just basically, it puts you in the margins, because there isn't a space for objection, which then people can engage in a really constructive, destructive conversation, like Mina was talking about earlier. So there is, I think that there's just a slight different resonance between disagreement and objection. That's how I would think about it.
Okay. Okay. I'm checking also the time, and I really would like to go ahead and be precise. So if anyone else wishes to add something, Alexis, I saw your hand before. Do you wish to add something?
Yeah. Just that I have a picture in my mind. Is that if there are objections and they stay in the darkness, they are not expressed, then we have a multiplication of bad feelings, of doubtful ideas. So it's very, very important for everybody to recognize that there are objections, there are different opinions, bring them in the light, and then we have a chance to explore, to seek for common ideas, understand each other better, at least. That's why we have to welcome the objections.
And we also welcome Ed, who just showed up behind Monica. Hi, Ed. Welcome to our small circle here. And interesting for me as a facilitator of this part, it was very interesting that the objection was the main point and not the leadership, which is also an important thing as far as I understand. But if people think that, if we think that this is what we have to discuss, I'm fine. So
Well, can I just point out one thing in case our participants didn't notice this or didn't realize this? Aliki introduced herself as the leader or the director of ITLA, but notice that Aliki was not facilitating. I think that's the point that George is making. I'm a junior scholar. It was my first year in the university system, you know, and I was the facilitator because my peers in the circle nominated me to be the facilitator. And that's changes the dynamics greatly when the leader is not the person. We could have nominated Aliki to be the facilitator, but it's a very different dynamic when the leader can actually watch what's going on and usually participate better when they're not trying to facilitate as well.
Very interesting. Thank you, Renee, for this. Okay, so we can move now to the next part of our symposium, which is actually 3 presentations from 3 different fields where there's experience from applying sociocracy as an organizational method, way of communicating and coming to decisions. And I would like first to ask Claudio to give us his views and ideas from applying it into his university, and how he felt about applying it and what were the difficulties. Go ahead, Claudio. You have
thank you very much.
A few minutes.
The time is going, and I will share with you an experience. I tried to use some ideas of dynamic governance in the PhD program. I am the coordinator of the PhD program in learning and innovation in social context and workplaces. And this program has formal curriculum. So the classical seminar, workshop, focus on scientific literature review, doing empirical research, foundation of education. And we have also a seminar, a workshop that was planned in connection with requests from enterprises and from events that happen in the world. It means that this is the area where I try to use dynamic governance. And I try to introduce some experiment in 2 levels. The first one is the level of the board, or a part of the board of the PhD program. The second level is the PhD students. It's very different because it's not simple to introduce this approach to organize a governance into the academia, a PhD program. I found some colleagues who said, why I have to change my routine? What is the rules of this game? And so there are probably limits or topic to discuss to apply dynamic governance into the complex organization. Or this is my experience. With the students is more not simple, but exciting, because the students need to understand different way to take decision, are more curious, and there is not business or personal interest involved in the meeting. So, in conclusion, I'm trying to experiment this approach to governance some aspects of the PhD program I lead, and at the end I know that for colleagues, for adults, is not simple. You have to create before probably the culture of a dynamic decision process, and after teach the methods, because this is my little experience. And for the students is very, very interesting, because the students are immediately engaged in the game, immediately. And the problem is this: when the students grow up in these methods, the colleagues are some problems because they don't have more power to take decision about what is the best research we have to follow in the next month. Who decide this? The students, the enterprise, or the board, or all together? And so my conclusion is this: probably sometimes we have not the condition to use dynamic governance, but there are many spaces into academia to experiment. And for sure, for me, the two words I learned after this experience is this: create trust. Trust is important, because I can discuss in this session if I don't trust you. And engagement. The impact is the engagement. People start and are in the circle, and after this experience don't want to leave the circle, because there is visibility also.
Okay.
Is important. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. Mina, how about your experience with using sociocracy at Kaiser?
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, and
I've put
please,
together a few slides.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just 2 or 3 minutes. It will be nice if you.
Okay, so I'll go fast. I work for the Center for Health Systems Performance at Kaiser Permanente. I'm a principal consultant. Let me get here. Our goal is we're a national consultative body. And so we support the 8 regions around the nation of Kaiser: Northern California, Southern California, Hawaii, Northwest Hawaii, Mid-Atlantic states, which includes Washington, D.C. and Maryland, and a Georgia region. We have a portfolio of training. Our key training is this Level 2 Associate Improvement Advisor workshop. It gives the skills that students will need to go to more advanced training. And our challenge.
We can't see it.
Oh, you can't. What are you seeing?
It says double. Mina Wilson has started screen sharing. Double click to launch the screen sharing. Try it again.
Okay, I'm going to try it again.
There you go. You got it.
Okay, thank you. So this is our portfolio of training. We worked on the Associate Improvement Advisor workshop, which is the broad training that prepares people for higher levels of training engagement. Our challenge was we had no feedback loop from the field for this training. And so it had gotten stale, and our innovative trainers had done their own thing. So we had no baseline of knowledge to move to the higher levels of training based upon. So I did a project, and we pulled people from each of the regions into what we call a performance improvement team to accomplish a few goals, to remove the variation from the content, to develop a process for feedback, and really to give a solid baseline of knowledge for our other programs. Our outcomes from the project, 7 of the 8 regions were represented in the performance improvement team. We were able to reduce the delivery time of the course by 6 months, and we had to pivot in the middle because COVID ensued. So we were developing a face-to-face course, but because of the generative input from all of the regions, our Mid-Atlantic region said, we need a virtual course. We're going to pick this up. We're going to design it. And they really delivered it to us as a national body because of their passion for it. Out of that also, our leadership saw the value, and they launched what we call a curriculum advisory group circle. And so now we have all of these people collaborating around how to keep that curriculum current over time. And they also launched a circle above it strategically called the Regional PI Leadership Circle. And they're going to continue governing and leading as the Curriculum Advisory Circle does their function. This is some of the work we did around laying out the governance model we would follow as we prepared to do that. And this is the Magna Opus, our regional charter that chartered our group. to function this way. I think this was a big shift for Kaiser, and I'm hoping that we continue on successfully. And that's what I have to share. I'll turn it back to you, George.
Thank you. Okay. And actually, this session is over because Petra is going to explain her case in the end. So I think Alexis now has the floor to present his ideas about how to connect sociocracy with transformative learning. And this is the last intervention from my point.
Thank you, George. And I hope I express the ideas of all of us. We participate in this meeting, I think we are all familiarized with and experienced in transformative learning or emancipatory learning. So probably, I think you notice the affinities and the links between the Socratic ideas and principles and the theoretical traditions of transformative learning that regard the creation of conditions for the individual and collective transformation. For instance, the sociocratic ideas have strong links with the conceptualization of Habermas and Mezirow regarding discourse, or with the ideas of Freire regarding democratic dialogue, or with the ideas of Taylor regarding empathetic knowing. So given that our time now is very limited, I stop here. You can find more in the proceedings. So I would like to give now the floor to Petra, the floor and the space, for her to complete the symposium.
Alexis, I'm happy to, if you wanted to, you could, because I only need a minute or so. If you want to, you can continue.
That's okay. I think everybody can find, it's a theoretical thing, so everybody can find it in the proceedings. So I think it's better for you to,
Okay. Thank you so much, Alexis.
To continue.
Thank you. Yes, I'm getting the 3-minute warning. That's fine. So I had also prepared a case study showing how we used at my university sociocracy for decolonizing, indigenizing the curriculum, and you find this case study in the document which John shared. So I skipped that because it's all on the slides there, but just to let you know, this was very, very successful. And hence I'm really passionate about sociocracy. So I hope from the overview from John Buck, from the fishbowl, where we showed you how we are using or how basically sociocracy looks in action, from the case studies and from Alexis's short linking of sociocracy and transformative learning, that sociocracy holds tremendous value for really decolonizing higher education and liberating higher education and adult education to give voice to educators again. Because using sociocratic principles would give all of us the voice in how we are actually govern ourselves as a body, and in that then how we are implementing higher education, adult education, and how to what approaches to use, what pedagogies to use, and what content to use. Whereas at the moment we are all basically by the powers to be and the top-down structures suppressed in doing so. And the beauty from my perspective also about sociocracy is that it can be implemented parallel to any existing structures. So we can use it basically parallel, build it up parallel to the existing structures, and then have that empower the academics and the practitioners and to really ensure that we're creating a transformative environment for all of us, individually and collectively, so that we can actually address our existential crisis and come and create an environment in which everybody can thrive. So on that note, I conclude the session, but before I do so, I really would love to thank all of my colleagues. And again, SOCIOCRACY shows how much we have grown together, and to pull off such a symposium online, which is not the easiest thing to do. I really admire you. I thank you, and I'm grateful for SOCIOCRACY having brought us together, that we can actually play such a thing by ear and can pull it off. So thank you very much. And I thank all the participants for being here in this space with us, and being very generous with us, and learning together with us on the way along. And I hope you are intrigued by SOCIOCRACY and you give it a try. And if you would like to give it a try, we are here and more than happy to give you a helping hand. So please get in touch with us if you're interested. Thank you so much for everybody, and enjoy the rest of the conference. And I go to bed now again. Thank you.
Thank you, team. So good to see you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, for joining us. That was really, really special. And,
yes.
And also, my assumption is that all this will the slides and our materials will be included in the proceedings or in the recording. So folks who are curious can have John's slides and Petra's slides and all that. So, and I'm just speaking to this because I think the recording is still on. That's why I'm doing that, so that we have a note of it. And I see here we have a little a note here.
Yes, from Giovanna De Globo.
Yeah.
Says, thank you for this interesting symposium. Personally, I have experiences of dynamic governance in territory management, and in particular in the management process of cultural and natural heritage as a common good. I used the study circle device for the management of transformative learning processes with an impact on local communities and development of skills of the stakeholders involved. I have found many common reflections with my experience. Thank you. We thank you for sharing this
Thanks for sharing
information, Giovanna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night, Petra.
Good night,
Petra.
Good night.
Renee, thanks so much for facilitating. Well
yes,
done.
that was awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, I never would have guessed would have come up with a Jedi circle. I mean, how great was that?
We love that. Mina, yay!
That's the best thing ever.
Yeah.